I turned this sim screenshot into art with just one click. I did not use generative AI or fiddle around for hours in Photoshop. In this video, I'm going to share the apps I use and how to create different types of art from your photos with them. So there are 4 different apps I recommend if you want to create artwork from your screenshots. So first we have Photo Sketcher. Here's an example of what you can create with them. So as you can see, the painting above has like this watercolor effect. And then below we have more of this merging of watercolor with oil. So I combined 2 effects. The good news is this costs 0 monies. So it's for free. You can download it off the internet. Costs nothing. The only thing it might cost you is your time because the effects are a bit slow to generate and apply. You can create a multitude of art styles with this app, so you can turn your screenshot into a pencil sketch, pen and ink sketch, a painting, watercolor, or a more like stylized abstract piece of work. What's really cool and where you can really get creative is you can combine different effects with each other, which is what I did with the photo in the bottom right-hand corner. So you can apply an effect, then you can use that new image as a base to apply the next effect, and you can keep doing that as many times as you want. It's also fairly customizable, this app. So for example, there are various parameters that you can tweak and adjust to your liking. You can make a certain brush stronger or less stronger. You can also upload a custom brush. So I tried this with varying success. So I think so from what I gather, the brush has to be black, a PNG file, and should have some sort of like texture to it. And you can experiment with that, but that is definitely a way you can customize the results to be something more unique. One downside with the app is that of all the different effects it includes, I feel like only a couple were really good for Sims. Otherwise, it's mostly best if you wanted to create artwork from your landscapes, but this is probably just more trial and error. You can play around with it. And so I want to demonstrate the app as well so you can see how to use it. So this is what Photo Sketcher looks like when you've got it opened up. To the left, you have your base image, and then to the right, we have what the image looks like after you applied the effect. And so I'll just drag in a photo of mine from my screenshots folder, for example, this one here. And you can zoom out so you can see them side by side. To apply an effect, you then click on this art swatch thingy here, and then you can choose. So you have here these drop-down toggles, and you can choose between the pencil sketch effects, the pen and ink, and so forth. And here you see the various parameters you can change. And if you change something and you're not too happy, then you can reset it. And here you see a little preview window. It's a little bit slow, but if you hover over the plus and minus icon, you can have it zoom in and out. And then here I can, as you can see, I can move things around. And then it might take a little moment, but then it'll start loading what the effects looks like. So a little preview. So as you can see here, this is a little preview of what it would look like if I applied this pencil sketch 1 effect. And then if I move on to the painting effects, so I believe painting 9 looked okay for Sims. So as you can see, this is what it looks like in the preview. And if I want to actually apply it now, I actually want to have it on the Sim, I want to see what it looks like, then I click on draw. And what's fun as well, at any time you can press the escape button and it will interrupt the process. And so if you actually so for example, let's say I like this already, the way it looks like. Then I can stop the process and it gives me the image as is. And I kind of like that actually, because I think the more you let the process continue, it adds almost too much detail and kind of messes up the image. So again, trial and error, you can play around with this, but this is definitely something I recommend, is to interrupt the process if at any point you really like what you see. And then if you want to save this image, you can right click and say save the drawing as. Or if you want to use this image as the base for your next effect, you can right click and say swap left and right images. And now this image here will be the basis for the effect I apply next. Now I messed up somehow and this window is now away and out of reach for me, so I can't really move it. So I will just continue with the effects that are in my view and see what happens. So I can click painting 11, for example, and you'll see it already load here. And so I'll just click draw and we can see it working its magic. Now I found that the more you play around with this, the slower it gets. So you can see here the loading time. So it's 55% done or 56% done with the image generation. Again, this isn't generative AI. This is just a filter effect that's being applied to the photo. But the more often I use it in one session, I find that it starts to get a bit slow. So I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. And so this is the image now after that painting 11 was applied. So this is basically what it looks like if I combine painting 9 with painting 11 in that order. And so here you can see it's a bit more washed out, a bit more abstract. You know, this might be the effect you're going for, or you might prefer this simple watercolor texture. So that is an example of how you can use the app. So that's how PhotoSketcher works. The next app I like to use is a bit more complex, has a little bit more to it, and it's called Impresso Pro. And so here's what some photos look like after I ran them through Impresso Pro. So as you can see, I get more of a painterly effect here, like a proper like oil or acrylic. Now this app is not free. It costs one time $49.99, so it is something you'd have to spend some money on, but it is very quick to use. So I feel like this app is definitely speedier than PhotoSketcher, and it is a one-time purchase, so I personally feel like it's worth it. But it does come with a free demo, so you can test it out to your heart's content and throw as many screenshots into it as you want, play around with all the different options to see if you like it. And then you can have like this really informed decision if you want to buy it or not. It comes with quite a few art styles as well. So it comes with alla prima, en plein air, soft paint, background paint, aged paint, and tash, whatever that is. I'm not really an expert when it comes to art styles, but it's really fun to use when you're in the app. I'll show that in a second. And with this app, you can also combine different effects. So in this app, it works with different layers. So you can blend the styles with smart layers on top of each other. You can change the visibility of layers, the intensity. You can even like brush them out a little bit. And so it's very customizable, which is something I really like about this app as well. Oh, and just a quick note, this is not sponsored. I just really like these apps. So I'm not paid to say this. I don't have an affiliate code. And this is my absolutely unbiased, independent opinion. But what makes it so highly customizable is, for example, you can choose a brush style and a background type for each individual painting. So I think that's really cool. And so you can really create unique constellations of the different effects just by changing the brush style. There are also a ton of sliders and parameters that you can change here as well, and they have quite a big difference when you modify them. What I really like is also there is a tool to help you add back details into the photo. So as you can see here, you know, if you have this like painterly effect, it can actually distort some of the features. For example, if you have a face, you want to see the eyes clearly, you want to see the lips clearly, maybe there's jewelry pieces you want to see clearly. This can get a little bit distorted when you apply a painterly effect, but there's a tool in the app that lets you actually bring back these details. And so I think that's really cool. And it also includes brushes that let you refine and blur areas individually. So this lets you create a more individual effect. Again, you know, you can get very custom with this and you can refine different layers individually. So you can really create a unique piece. So it's not just slapping an effect on the photo and being done with it. No, you can really get creative in the way you combine the different effects and adjust the different sliders and all that. So this is what the app looks like when you first open it. So you can drag an image inside. So I'll just drag the same image we had before, and it just applies like a default effect. The main thing you'll be using when you use Impresso Pro are the presets. So I can click on one and see relatively quickly it applies that preset. And so here are various different presets. You kind of see a little bit of a preview in the thumbnail below, but sometimes it's not always really representative of what you can expect. But you can just click through them. The more you use the app, of course, the more you'll be familiar with what kind of style the effect will create. And like I mentioned before, you have different layers as well. And you can also click on this button here and you can add specific layers. For example, I can add a tash layer, and you see that'll add this other effect on top. I can make the alla prima copy invisible, and with the tash I can modify the different strokes. I can change the stroke variation. I can change the brush style here, and it'll give me a different effect. So there are all sorts of different settings here that you can change. You can also randomize the effect. So here you can see it can randomly change the layers and the different sliders for the various effects that you have. And I mentioned beforehand that there's a possibility to bring back details. So I think that was for these presets here, you have that possibility. Now, I don't have a face here. I'll show you with a face. Let's see, I'll bring in Sienna and I'll apply one of these presets. So I think it's usually the ones that are like for portraits, where you can bring back the details. Let's see, for this one you can bring back details, and as you can see I would probably want to, and so you click on this icon here, you click add detail, And now you can modify this selection space, this selection area. For example, I want it to be for her face, and then I can like make this go up a little bit, and then I can change the detail size so you can see what happens. It gives you a bit of a preview. I think the smaller the detail size, the more detail you get back. So I just always bring it down completely, and then I can click on apply. And as you can see, now we have that detail is brought back into her face, but everything else still has that like strong painterly effect. I just love that because this way you can have the detail, so the sim is still recognizable, but you still have that like acrylic or oil effect. And then if you wanted to save a photo, you just click here. Now, if you're using the demo version, you can't save a photo, but you can try out all the different presets, all the different sliders here and settings, and you can see if you like it and what it would look like on your specific screenshots. And this here is also quite fun. So if you press it, you can see a before and after. So you can see how much that effect changed your screenshot.
Okay, real talk. If you're anything like me, you care about your Sims, like deeply. You've got legacies, storylines, save files that actually mean something to you. But let's be real, it's easy to lose track. One day you're totally invested, and then suddenly you're not. You forget who lives where, what was supposed to happen next, or even why you love that sim in the first place. That's exactly why I made the Sim Guardian. This Notion system helps me stay connected to my Sims by giving me one place to track everything. And I mean everything. I can see my entire save file at a glance, who lives where, all the lore, what everyone's working toward. Every Sim has their own page for backstory, traits, relationships. I can even see their own businesses and shared memories. And every legacy has its own page as well to save their bloodline, heritage, and history. I can manage my rotation of gameplay, challenges, storyline ideas. It's all here. Heck, I can even keep track of my mods and CC in this system. It's the most organized I've ever been. And honestly, it's the easiest it's ever been to keep track because I don't have to figure out where to start. I've already done the work of setting things up. Now I can just fill it in. So yeah, it's $100, but if you're serious about your Sims, it's worth it because the stories you're playing, they deserve to be remembered.
2 down, 2 more to go. So that was Impresso Pro. And from the same people that made Impresso Pro, so Jixie Pix Software, I think is what their name is, we have an app called Pastello. Now, Impresso Pro gives you more of that impressionistic, acrylic, like oil painting vibe of styles. Now, Pastello is a bit different here. You'll see in these pictures, so it's more of a chalky or like colored pencil look. Cost is again $49.99, but we still have a free demo. And the art styles are pastel, pencil, chalk, charcoal, crayon, conte, and graphite. So more of your colorful, soft, dry media. All the things like the smart layers and most of the brush settings and the customizability exists in this app just as much as it did in Impresso Pro, so I won't go into that. But I do want to show off Pastello just to show you the different effects it has. So again, very similar look here. We have our presets down here, and we actually have different categories of presets. So once I have a photo in here, I'll be able to click on the different tabs here, and I'll see different categories and collections of presets. We have our layers here and our adjustment settings here. And so I'll just drag and drop photo from before. Again, a default preset is applied. And so now I can go through here and I can click on the different effects and we can see how it changes the photo. Go to crayon. I can also randomize. If I'm not sure what I want, and I just want to see, what happens, go to pastel. You see, it also really affects the colors as well, depending on the preset you use. Sometimes it stays close to the colors that are already in the screenshot. Sometimes it changes them drastically and adds more vibrance to them or more saturation. So I think that's really fun to play around with. You also have these black and white pencil presets that you can use. And I think this is actually quite fun. Like I can imagine creating this, exporting it, and recoloring it by hand in Procreate, for example. So I have Procreate on the iPad, and I think this would be a fun way to create like a sketch outline that you have, and then you can work with it in a different app and you can like color it in your own self so that it still has a little bit of that handmade effect, but you get like a jump start thanks to this app, creating that pencil sketch for you. And so I think this is very, very fun. And I think this one works both for Sims as well as landscapes. So I think this one works best for landscapes, whereas Impresso Pro I think works really well for both Sims and landscape screenshots. Now, Jixie Pixie makes a few apps, so not just the 3 I'm showing you in this video today, but I feel like these 3 are really the best for what we need them for. And so the last one is called Watercolor Studio, and I think it's really fun. As the name says on the tin, we get watercolor effects on our photos. This one costs, again, $49.99. So if you get all 3, it does add up. I think to start with, the Impresso Pro is probably the most versatile. Again, I think this one works best with Sims and landscapes, whereas Pastello, as well as Watercolor Studio, I feel like don't give maybe sometimes always the best results when you're using it for a sim screenshot, but for landscapes, they're all like excellent and superb. But I think you'll get the most mileage probably out of Impresso Pro for that reason. They all have free demos, so you can try them out and see which effects you really like. And you don't have to get them all at the same time. If you love them all, you can just get them bit by bit, depending on what your budget is, or you can just grab one. And the art styles included with this set for Watercolor Studio, we have watercolor portrait and landscape presets, we have a color wash preset, ink wash, as well as like a spatter effect that you can overlay on top of your images to give them more like realistic, painterly watercolor effect. This is what Watercolor Studio looks like when you open up the app. Again, very familiar, more or less the same exact setup as we had before with the other apps from Jixie Pix Studio. I'll drag in the same screenshot so we can have like that comparison, and I'll apply the artistic detail effect, and you can see it's really fun. So it makes the colors a lot more vibrant. It adds some negative space, it adds some inky looking outlines, and some watercolor splotches. And you have outline detail. Then there are some that have less inky outlines. So this one's a little bit less inky outlines. I actually like this one for this particular screenshot. Or I could, go over here. Let's see, what else do we have? We have romantic detail, warm and bright. And again, as before, we have the option to change the layers, their visibility. We have a lot of options here that we can change as well. So again, if you try out this app, I recommend just, pulling everything up and down just to see how each slider impacts the image. And then you can, after some practice, I think you can really get creative in combining these different effects with each other. And we also have here, again, more categories. So we have classic presets, washes. It seems you can also save your own preset. If you, come up with something interesting over here, then you can save that as well. So if I go to classic, we have, for example, classic abstract, which has not as much ink, but as you can see, this is very, abstract, as the name says. Let's try some washes, what that would look like. Old and worn. So that is also really fun. So it makes it look like it's a really old ink drawing. I can imagine this could be, if you have historical gameplay, you could, imagine that, you don't have that many colors, that many, inks available, in a historical times. And so I feel like a watercolor painting might look more like this than what we saw before. And so if you're playing like the decades challenge, then you might want to apply this style to your screenshots. And if we randomize, let's see what it comes up with. Oh yeah, that looks very colorful. Yeah, so we have like very different effects here. So you can either use some presets, you can roll the dice, or you can, get really creative on your own. And here again, we have the option to add some detail back to the image if we wanted to. Let's say I wanted to add some detail back to his head, maybe. Let's do it there. Then I can modify the size of this area. And then again, I'll make the strength go down, I think. Let's see, or I think in this case, you want to bring the strength up if you want more detail. And then if I put the strength down, then it has less detail, yeah. So that's how it works. It's like kind of the other way around than it was for the Impresso. But, similar principle, and then I can apply that. And that's how I was able to add a little bit more detail. I think it basically just removes some negative space here from the image that it added through the watercolor effect. And again, you can play around with these finishes here. I think that'll give a different, you see, it changes up the colors a little bit. So it's really fun. You can try them out. So as you can see, you have here a ton to choose from. And you can also change the paint style from portrait to landscape. Portrait, I feel like, gives a little bit more detail, whereas landscape adds more negative space. So that's really fun. That's how you can use the different apps. But you might be wondering, okay, but what do I do now with these different, artworks, so to say? What do I start with them? Well, I think there are a lot of things that you can do if you're creative and imaginative. So you could tell a story, for example, with the image. For example, this one here, I created in the Pastello app. I chose Colored Pencil 19, that preset, and it gave this like antique vintage look. And so maybe this is a photo that your sim found in the attic or something like that, and they're questioning, who is this person to us? Like maybe they found it in their grandpa's collection, and so they're asking themselves, who is this person to their grandpa? This is how you can maybe introduce a character to a story, or it could inspire story. It could also embellish story, like maybe you already have story of something like this from the past, and so you can vintagify, so to say, a photo if you need to, so that it fits into the story. You know, I personally like to collect memories of my Sims. I like to write down their stories, and so naturally I want to add photos to these stories as well. And so this is a way that you can make edits to a screenshot so that it fits, you know, the time period of the story or the vibe of the story. You could also play pretend. For example, you could play pretend that it's a commissioned portrait of your sim. So here, for example, I have images of Queen Sophia and her husband, King Morgan. And I imagined in the game that they were painted by, you know, the best painter across all the lands. And of course, a screenshot wouldn't cut it. A screenshot does not look like a painting. I wanted that look, so I added the screenshots into the app, and then I was able to create like that painterly effect to make it look like it was actually a commissioned painting of these Sims. You could also pretend that it's artwork made by your sim. Well, maybe your sim, they have a high painting skill, and when they were on holiday, they took out their watercolors and they painted the beachfront of Tortosa, or they had some pastel or colored pencils with them, and when they looked out into the pier, they were inspired and they colored in the pier. Of course, your sim could create real art in the game, like within the game, but as I mentioned before, there is a bug going around that can break these things, and so this is a way you can like pretend to say that they created this art. It actually does look like art, right? And you can even recolor frames to add that custom art and paintings to your game. So you don't only have the possibility to add these, you know, pretend paintings in your stories, you know, wherever you're logging them, but you can bring them back into the game and have them on the walls of your Sims. And you don't have to be afraid of them corrupting your game. If you're like, recolor frames, what is that? How do I do that? Well, check out the video on the screen. I've already done all the grunt work of editing the texture files for 13 base game frames and explain in the video how to use the templates I made. You only have to drop in your photo and you're done, easy peasy. So check out that video if you've always been curious about how to recolor frames, but you've always been a bit shy when it comes to the whole editing meshes part.